again with another story. And today I'll be reading A Dance for an Advantage by the lovely Holly Morris for the charity First Story. So a quick word on them before I start. They encourage and support young people from all backgrounds to write creatively and leisurely, basically. And it's to help them thrive in life and education. So this was in their own words. So basically writing is a very important skill, and thanks to that we have these lovely stories for you to listen and for me to have the pleasure of telling, me and of course other narrators, and I do hope that you enjoy them. So please listen to all the stories and don't hesitate to check out First Story and what they do. That said, let's get on to story, shall we? May I request the next dance, milady? Tilda had to bite her lip to mask her cry of delight. Marco's suit was as dark as night, fitted at his shoulders and waist before flaring impressively into his tails. It matched perfectly with his dark curls. Grinning, he extended one snowy glove out to Tilda's dance card and plucked it from her. Speaking with his usual candor, he read down the extensive list of names already scrawled in the table. Looks like I'm going to have to request for the 60th dance instead. What are you doing here? Tilda's breath fluttered as she tried to keep her composure. She moved her fan up to her face so her mother could not see and smiled at him broadly. I didn't know you were invited. I wasn't. The suit is my brother's, and I pretended that I was the one of the other guest chaperons to get the past guards. I think her name was Felicity, but she was complimenting me too much for me to bother to listen. Of course, Tilda nodded, feigning sympathy, causing Marco to chuckle. How hard life is for Marco Fieschi. If I'd known you were going to be here, I wouldn't have accepted all of these dances. If I'm honest, Tilda lowered her voice, forcing Marco to lean closer to her. I just fanned at the first good-looking man I could find and left Mother to investigate the Duke. Ah, yes, the guest of honor. And what has dear old Mummy discovered? As he spoke, Marco drew out a pencil from his pocket and placed the tip against the bow of his lips, still looking at the dancing card. He recognized Papa. He's quite a fan. He's also incredibly wealthy and plans to travel to Switzerland next month to stay in his private chateau in the Alps. The city has brought him down, apparently. Just your type, then. Do you see me as that shallow? Yes, it suits you, though, he added when Tilda snapped her fan warmingly against her hand. It means men want to try and tame you. Very desirable. Tame me? Tilda's voice dripped with poison. Tame me. Tilda's voice dripped with poison. My God, you make it sound like I'd be out on the streets burning the red flags with the rest of them. Realizing what she said, she clapped a hand to her mouth. It was one thing to mock the revolution. It was another to joke that you were part of it. Besides, Tilda continued embarrassed, it's not as if the Duke is going to choose me. He can't take his eyes off the gorgeous blonde girl in the blue dress. Do you know who she is? No, I'd remember a face like hers. Tilda ignored the sour taste of jealousy that prickled in her throat. I should have worn my blonde wig as Papa suggested. She laughed, only half faking it. With a final flourish, Marco handed back her dance card before bending forward and kissing her hand. I've always had a soft spot for brunettes myself, he replied, winked, and then disappeared into the crowd. The back of Tilda's hand was cool and sensitive as she held it close to her chest. There was a slight shine where his lips had brushed her skin as she wanted to stroke her fingers over it. She knew her chest was flushed and moved her fan to keep her calm facade. The song ended with a quivering flourish, and the room rang with applause. There was a collective flutter as the men bowed and women curtsied, their skirts billowing out so they looked like beautiful water lilies on a golden lake. Tilda felt a sudden longing to be one of them and consulted her dance card to see who she would be dancing with. To her surprise, the card had changed. Every other name had been scribbled out beyond legibility except for the last, where Giuseppe Marco Fieschi was written across the bottom, written so hard she knew that no amount of scribbling would hide it. A warm burst of happiness flooded her stomach that had nothing to do with the champagne. Luke was sweating. He was glad that his jacket was dark, so it hid the dark patches under his armpits as he smiled politely at another gaggle of girls in front of him. The one in pale green moved to strike up a conversation, but Luke knew it was no use. His eyes kept getting pulled back to the crowd on the girl in the blue dress. Each time he thought the sucker punch in the stomach would be less, but with each smile, it would take his heart long to steady. He had already sent one of his staff over there on his behalf and requested for her next dance. But the song kept going on and on. He kept wondering what he should say to her, but then shook his head and scolded himself. This wasn't supposed to happen. He intended on showing his face to please his father, then sneak out later, and yet each time an opportunity had arrived, he'd never been able to do it. He'd never been able to take it. At last, the song finished, followed by the usual applause and clinking of glasses. Whilst partners moved and small conversations broke out, the girl seemed suddenly frozen. She did not move forward to the dance floor or open her fan in his direction. But no other man seemed to be moving to ask for her hand. She must be waiting for him. She's not the only one, the voice said darkly in his head, but Luke pushed it away. One dance, then he'd leave. As he descended from the royal platform, there was a ripple of grasp from the guests. Many got distracted on their way to the dance floor, bowing and curtsying, and a ray of fans flapping open wide. So, a soft chill swept the room. There were calls from chaperones and ministers, but Luke ignored them all, making his way through before finally reaching close enough to hold out slightly shaking hand. "Would you like to dance, milady?" he said, smiling. The girl blinked. A small crowd was staring at her. There was no chaperone to speak for her, so it was at her discretion to refuse, which made Luke more nervous. He had been so sure before that she wouldn't refuse him. He was a prince, after all, but she was so intimidating it caused his confidence to waver. After what seemed like an eternity, she accepted his outstretched hand. "I'd be honored, Your Highness." Her voice, like his, was shaking, but there was warmth behind it as she followed him into the dance floor, where the crowd moved to allow them plenty of dance space. The orchestra seemed to wait until Luke was ready. Then the music swelled and the world seemed to melt away. She moved deliberately, every touch timed and safe. It caught Luke off guard. Normally this wouldn't matter because they'd be engaging in conversations, but it seems like he'd lost his tongue again. Her collarbones were dusted white, and up close she seemed cold compared to the golden warmth of the room. For the first dance, they were unable to look at one another. Their eyes would flit to each other, then it would be a race of who could look away first. In his mind, Luke crafted his next sentence. "You look beautiful tonight." Not too forward, but enough for her to be aware of his affections. He could hear a clock chime and knew that even if he left now, he was going to be over an hour late. He promised him he'd be there this time, that there wasn't anyone else he'd choose. "I'll be waiting for you, and I will wait until it is clear you will not come." The music changed. The couples drew close. A hush fell over the room. The girl blinked. A flash of panic masked her face. "It's okay," Luke smiled. He moved his hand around to the small of her back, looking for any sign of her being uncomfortable. "This is the first time I've ever done anything like this," she whispered. "I wouldn't have known. I keep trying to remember what the next step is." "You're not going to hit someone else." "No, I'm more worried about stepping on your toes." To his surprise, Luke laughed. A short, loud "ha!" that made them both jump. Luke nodded his head apologetically to his fellow dancers, but couldn't hide his broad grin. "If you step on my toes, I promise not to tell anyone, lady." "Élysée," she smiled, the sight causing Luke to shiver. "My name is Élysée." The darkness of the corridors suffocated Marco like Scoot. Keeping his head low, he walked away from the ballroom and then out of one of the many glass doors. The warm night greeted him, and over the high hedges of the palace gardens, he could glimpse the twinkling lights of the city far away. No marvel on earth could match Paris in the summer. For a moment, Marco allowed his heart to pang as he envisioned Tilda walking beside him, glowing under the moonlight, and her hand in his. It was difficult seeing her then and not telling her everything. How could she not see that to him no girl on that dance floor was comparable to her? He forced himself back to his fantasy. If he was successful, there would be nothing stopping him and Tilda from being together. No more hiding, no more pretending. This was all for her. Disgusting, isn't it? Marco's blade was in his hand and about to swing before he realized who was speaking. Like Marco, Pierre was wearing a suit. However, whilst Marco was plain and dark, Pierre's waistcoat was a rich, deep plum with a glittering gold pocket watch. Whilst many women would happily doff their dance card this way, he always caused a shiver of dislike to run down Marco's spine. "Disgusting?" Marco repeated, trying to control his tone. The dagger was still clutched at his side. Pierre flicked his hand toward the glowing palace. "Look at them all, bedeking themselves and then eating amuse-gueule like the prize pigs they are, whilst our people are dying. Whilst our people are dying. We have killed many of their own. Not enough. Fighting has changed since Napoleon. It is no longer about strength, but money, and the revolution hasn't got 2 francs to rub together." "That's life." "No, that's war." War, the very thing Marco had tried to escape, and yet now he stood in the middle of the storm. "Did you discover anything?" Pierre asked. 3 of the king's sons, including the Duke of Orleans, will be accompanying the king tomorrow. Pierre sneered. "Excellent. Would it not be too risky if we attempted to exterminate them all?" "You have not seen the Infernal yet. Pepin finished her this morning. This is marvel. The king should be honored we want to use such a weapon on him." He was quivering in glee, causing his cane to patter against the concrete like a hummingbird. Marco felt like a weight had just dropped in his stomach. How am I supposed to know how to use such a weapon? "We are to leave in a moment and travel to Boulevard du Crime. I will teach you there. Come." Pierre commanded with a jerk of his head towards the city. He turned to leave, but Marco did not move. I cannot go right now, Pierre. I've got to do something first." "Ah, yes, Mathilde Beaulieu. Tell me, does she know of your little ulterior motive?" "I haven't told her anything." "Keep it that way," Pierre hissed, his expression steely. "The revolution is a cutthroat business. I would hate for someone you cared about to be a casualty." "You..." Pierre flicked the end of his cane up and jabbed it hard into Marco's advancing chest. He twisted the handle absent-mindedly, but Marco could not see the catch that would reveal the blade. "Really, Fieschi, all of this for some snobby socialite," Pierre tutted. He drew the cane away. "Go, have your dance with her. I'll dare say it'll be the last time you'll be able to for a while. There won't be time for balls when we're soaking the streets of Paris with your blood." And that was it. So I hope that you enjoyed it, and see you next time. Bye!